Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's public image training for Rotary District 5810. Happy to have you with us. And today we're going to talk about website platforms. So this is actually a topic that I most frequently get asked about. And so figured would throw this into one of these presentations. And so happy to have you join us. Really want to emphasize this is not meant as an endorsement of any platforms, but rather to help comment on some of the more popular ones, help you think through the decisions of where you should go, if you should change, need to change, all of that. So again, not officially endorsing anything, but just trying to answer some questions that frequently come up, and always available to answer your particular questions. So feel free to reach out, and we'll go ahead and get started. So mainly, again, looking at the top key areas, some things to think about without getting too technical, hopefully available to answer a question and answers, and if there are any particular questions, to take those. So we'll make the recording available, and you can refer to it later and or share with other people on your team. So really the most important thing to start with is the strategy. So what are you trying to achieve? That's really where to start before getting into any technology choices. And really want to think about with your website, is this a door for people looking in or for you looking out? Are you servicing members of the public who aren't as familiar with Rotary, who are trying to get more information? Or is this really a resource for your club members and facilitating them getting the information they're looking for? And ultimately, obviously, we'd like to have both. But the thing to remember is that you really want your website to be outward focused. You need it to be easy and accessible for people to get immediately to what they want. That's the user experience people are accustomed to. It's what they expect. And you can always ask for one or two more clicks to access information from Rotarians, and they'll be more familiar and be going to the site more regularly so that you can find it if it's deeper down in navigation or have to log into a member's area. But for the general populace, for search engine optimization, you really want to be public facing first. Your website is for non-Rotarians. So you really want to design everything from that standpoint for the public facing. But we know that there's a lot that needs to be done on the back end. And so as you're going through everything, you just really want to prioritize what matters and what's that sequence, so that when you're evaluating different solutions, that it's like, okay, this is our primary objective, so maybe it's attracting new members. Well, if that's the case, then you really do have to put that public face first. Look at search engine optimization. Are you writing copy and showing pictures that would be attractive that Google can index? Are you getting links and sharing links to help drive that traffic? And is it presenting in a way that would be attractive to new members? Is there an easy flow? If someone's interested, they can reach out, request to go to a meeting, have someone contact them. So you want to really think through that user experience and that customer experience and make sure it's consistent with the in real life experience. So you want to be thinking about that. Maybe your website and why you're even thinking about these questions is for your fundraisers or your events. And so you need to manage collecting money online or managing tickets and registrations. So really think about, well, what is the pain that you're having now, and prioritize what you need to consider in making a decision for another solution. Um, and that's going to really guide everything else. So I do want to touch on a couple of basics here, because a lot of times it's a little confusing. So you want to think about, there's the domain, there's hosting, and there's the website. And those are three different pieces. And so the domain, that's going to be like www.rotary.org. That's like the street address. That's how the internet and anyone else finds your site. That's the domain registration, and that's going to be a separate fee for all of these. Um, there's something called an SSL, a security lock, if you will. It turns that HTTP into HTTPS and shows a little lock in the browser bar. You must have that. In 2019 and beyond, you must have that. Google is actually generally not showing websites that don't have that SSL certificate. So it's depending on where you have the website hosted, it's an additional fee or not, but yes, you have to have that. So the domain, that's one cost, that's one thing. Um, then you also have to host it. So that's going to be like a plot of land if you think of this house analogy. So you have the street address that refers to a particular plot of land where something exists. So that's the hosting account, and those are separate fees usually, and they are separate pieces. And then the third piece is the website itself, kind of like the house that's on the plot of land that has a street address. So keeping in mind those three different elements, and when all are hosted in the same place, that's there are advantages to that. The big thing is you really want to make sure that your club has ownership of the domain beyond everything else. You don't want to lose ownership. And with certain platforms, if you, and with certain providers, agencies or whatnot, if they have the domain in their account, it can be tricky to get ownership again. So you just want to be really careful. A company like GoDaddy makes it really easy and cheap to register the domain, and you can still have your hosting, that plot of land, and build your website elsewhere, but you want to make sure the club owns the domain. And if you use a company like GoDaddy, it should only be probably about like $12 a year for the domain registration. So again, that street address. If you're being charged like $60, other things like that for just the domain, you are being taken advantage of. So don't use them. The security certificates, those can run about $70, $80 a year. So that is a legitimate cost. Um, and again, always happy to answer any particular questions around that. So looking at the platforms for, so that kind of plot of land where the website is built. And it used to be that you're basically, everything was in HTML and now HTML5. And so that's going to be all kind of that scary code in the background. And those sites, will use technology like Dreamweaver, and you have to have FTP to get it from a computer into the cloud. And it's still a really good solution, but I don't think for 99% of Rotary clubs that you want this sort of site. There's going to be limited people who can manage it, and we'll go into some of the different things. So another popular approach is a CMS. That's a content management system, CMS, and probably the most popular one is WordPress. But then there's also ones that are sort of a CMS plus. So they have this browser-based, which is going to be that content management system. And all the pieces are hosted in the cloud, SaaS, software as a service type solutions. But they also provide additional services that support what you're trying to do in interacting with those people visiting your site and interacting with your club. So marketing automation is a lot of what those plus elements are. And so those may include a customer relationship management database, so a CRM. That's where all the data about the people, that's where they're all housed. So everything about your interaction with me would be all kept together. All the interactions with this person would all be kept together, which makes it much easier to have those follow-up conversations, discussions, and also see, this really worked well, that's not so much. Then you also want to be able to send and track emails, and the tracking, we want to be careful with privacy concerns. So there are some issues around that, but most of the platforms will help you stay in compliance. So you do want to make sure that you do check all of the CAN spam laws around that. But again, most of the platforms will help you with that. But you want to know when you send something, did people open it? Is it a bad email address and it bounced? You want to be able to capture that sort of information, and not just kind of in the abstract, but back to that CRM per person. You don't want to hold someone accountable for, some information that you sent if there was a bad email address and they never even received it. But you also want to be able to follow up if someone seemed interested. They opened something, they clicked on a link, but then they didn't follow through. They clicked on the link about the fundraiser, but they didn't buy a ticket. So it's helpful to have that information. Social media integration. Let's make our lives easy. And if when we post something on our website, it also goes on Facebook and Twitter, all the better. And then there's some cool technology that we'll reference in a minute. So can expand on that social media integration and blogging. So I don't think enough clubs are really taking advantage of that opportunity. It's great for search engine optimization, SEO, for Google to see what's going on, what's current, what's new, what's of interest, and writing it for people who might become members, writing it for the media, some different opportunities with that. So looking at that same approach, so if we have HTML and HTML5, which was that first approach, something like Dreamweaver, again, you have to generally outsource that. So for not having the software and probably not the skill set to do it. Maybe you have one, maybe two people in your club who could do it, but it's a lot of burden on those individuals. They could move, they could leave the club, they could die. Um, so it's really not the best approach. So I'm not really recommending that. Another popular approach, as we were saying, is a content management system, CMS. WordPress being a really popular solution, and it is a good solution, but you just really have to be careful about where it's hosted, and we'll touch on that a little more. But it does have a lot of plugins, a lot of tools to try to get that CMS plus. But again, just have to be really careful with some security issues. A couple other CMSs you might hear of are Joomla and Drupal. Drupal is way too complicated. Just don't even. And Joomla is so insecure. Please, 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 please don't. Please don't. Please don't. There are so many viruses and worms and issues. That's from me, from an agency owner, not necessarily from a Rotary perspective. But in my experience running an agency and working with client sites, there have just been so many challenges with Joomla sites. There are other options, but again, with the resources that generally exist within a club, I've not seen any to date where Joomla or Drupal would be ones that I would recommend. But then there's also the CMS Plus that has a lot of additional opportunities and resources, and just make it really flexible and accessible to not just with the website, but to streamline other processes that we have with managing our clubs. So the reporting to RI of events and fundraisers, committees, things like that. So there are options. There's pros and cons with all of them. So let's get even a little deeper with all that. So again, WordPress is very popular. It is a really good solution, but there are two things that I would really emphasize if you do a WordPress site, and this applies for business as well as for a Rotary Club, and that is managed hosting. Do not ever, please, please, please do not ever do like a self-hosted or a non-managed WordPress. There are regularly updates that need to be made to that core cloud-based software, and very few people really stay on top of it. And I mean, it could be multiple times a day, but there's so many security hacks going on, and it's just kind of a sitting duck for bad people to try to do bad things through your website, and you would never really know. So if you do go with WordPress, a place like getflywheel.com is a good source. There are others, but you want to really make sure that it's a managed, that they are proactively staying on top of those updates. The other thing is you need a crazy secure password, because there's so many WordPress sites, there are just algorithms, robots all over the place that are trying to hack and using all sorts of combinations, words, letters, numbers, all this sort of stuff. You need to really have an extremely secure password, and that's for everyone who might have access to the site. For any website, any CRM, for any CMS, for your social media accounts, all that, please, please, please have at least 3 admins on your account, minimum 3. And also recommend having like a Gmail or info at your domain .com, .org email account to set up the original accounts as that master admin, because all of these should belong to your club, not to an individual in the club. But we really want to make sure that we have that redundancy of access, because it can be very challenging if, again, one person has that ownership and they move, they quit, they die. So that's for the domain ownership and the account for that, for your website, for all of these different platforms. But so there are, I said, these negatives and concerns with WordPress, but it is a really robust solution, has a lot of plugins to achieve a lot of things, a lot of pre-built themes, so you can have a really nice looking website. So there are some really good resources and reasons to use WordPress. It's not that easy to use. So unless you really do a lot in WordPress, there is a steep learning curve. So um, keep that in mind, that you may not truly be able to manage it yourself and still need to use an outside agency to help manage your site. On the other side of things, somewhat, is Club Runner. And if you're in District 5810, you most likely have heard of this and been exposed to it to some degree. And so there have traditionally been about 5 or 6 of these CMS Plus type solutions that have a built-in integration with Rotary International. So there are some definite pluses with that. For example, all of your membership information, as you maintain it in Club Runner, it goes to the district and goes to RI, so you don't have to resubmit all that paperwork. That's a definite plus. Helps streamline, stay on top of the event, the club management. So that is a great plus. You can distribute information. So for example, what are the email addresses of other club members? That's all maintained because it's all one CRM, one database. So there's some really great, great features with that. Do note that if you want to collect credit card payments, and that would include for dues, like in the core features, as you see, you can send out your invoices for membership, but unless you do the add-on for payment, you can't collect those payments. Or if you're doing events, that's a separate add-on. So they do have some additional pieces you have to pay for, and the cost is based on the number of members in your club. So again, the democratization of giving access within the club for membership information, managing the club with all the reports and the kind of the paperwork, there are a lot of pluses. There are a lot of pluses with Club Runner and with permissions. People in different roles can have more or less permissions on the back end. They have definitely made some improvements for how the websites can look, and to make it somewhat easier for programming and building out pages and content. So again, some good, some bad. Definitely, if you do this, take note of the payment costs per transaction with any of these platforms. You definitely want to look at that and compare that. If you could potentially have a significant cut into your revenue by those fees, so you just need to compare one to the other and determine against your usage what would be the best solution with the benefits involved. Another of those like basic things to consider is that whenever you do e-commerce, you have a shopping cart and the payment processing. Those are 2 different steps. Some solutions do bring those together, but that is a normal piece of the puzzle, and you want to look at what costs and what integrations are available with each of those. So again, a couple of shortcomings though with Club Runner is the CRM is priced on the number of members, and whenever you do any email marketing, it is limited to those in that CRM, so therefore members, past members, and the like. It's not for like the general populace, so that part is a little bit of a shortcoming. Forms limited, you don't really have tons of flexibility with that. The graphic design general appearance is getting better, but they're still, they haven't quite gotten to a lot of the mainstream products on the market, but they're getting there. There's no social media integration, so if you wanted to streamline that piece, that's something to consider. And events, even with the add-on, are still a little clunky, so may not be the best solution. And with all of these SaaS solutions, CMS solutions, you are pretty much stuck to that solution. It's not real easy to transfer from one platform to another. Another CRM, CMS Plus solution to possibly consider is something called Nation Builder, and are working with RI to try to get them as one of these approved automated platforms with their database reporting, but that's not there yet. But it does offer a lot of tools, a lot of flexibility for that outward facing approach. So you would still need to get your information for district and RI reporting, but you can easily export a CSV file out of this. But your you can have up to 5,000 people still at the monthly cost. Do note these prices are if you're paying annually, and 1,000 emails. So you can be building out that list of potential members, of people who are sponsors, people who regularly like to attend your events or your fundraisers. So you can do all of that. You tag people and you build it so that when they take certain actions, they're automatically tagged. That way your list is already segmented. Also sort of score so that if there's someone who really seems to do a lot, visits your site a lot, visits your social media, your Facebook, Twitter, get tagged as well, even LinkedIn, so that if someone's interacting with you on those social media platforms, it's in your CRM. So you know, wow, this might be someone to talk to about becoming a potential member. So there's a lot of opportunities there. For the credit card processing, they have an integration with Stripe. It's really easy to set up, and because it's all in one platform, you do save on some fees. But again, you want to really evaluate all the different solutions. And just as a side note, if you do a flag program where you're putting flags out in different neighborhoods, they have a Nation Builder. It was actually built for political campaigns, so that whole door-to-door concept, I suggest, would work really well for flag programs. So you can build it all in here, collect credit card payments, and set up the distribution lists based on, okay, we've got this many people here, this many people here, and you can do this turf cutting within this platform. So that is something to possibly consider. HubSpot is a personal favorite, I confess. And they have a lot that's free. I like free. Free's good. It's also crazy easy to use. And so you could even do this, let's say in combination. Let's say you used Club Runner for all the club management, but then you could use HubSpot, these free tools, for your outward facing and building your recruitment list, or for fundraisers or whatnot. So this does not have the event management with the free. It does not have credit card processing. But this would be, and we're using this for eClub Woke, is having, when people are interested in potentially becoming members or club members, know of people, they're like, we ought to look into this person. we want a place to store that. So we can use the HubSpot free CRM. It all gets logged in one place that multiple people have access to. And we have deals set up. So what are the stages for moving someone through the pipeline? So we want someone to do a phone call, do some emails, send some social media posts, have another, send the invitation, have another call. What are the different stages? And monitor someone going through that to make sure people don't fall through the cracks. There are a lot of additional tools, chatbots, integration with Facebook Messenger, free, and you can do a certain number of emails for free through this as well. So it may be something as part of the mix to consider. If events is really kind of the juggernaut, then maybe you don't need to change from what you have, but maybe just incorporate something like Eventbrite. So again, you want to pay attention to pricing for the events, although they do, if the event is free, you can take advantage of their services for free. But when you're trying to really keep on top of who's paid, are they paying at the door? Can you accept payment at the door? Um, the follow-up notifications, just really trying to streamline that whole process. Eventbrite has really risen to the top in the solutions for that. So it's something would definitely recommend as your, if tickets is really the big thing. So I guess really the takeaway here is that you're going to end up with a stack, a Marcom stack, that there's just not any one solution that will likely hit everything or in a very streamlined, cost-efficient manner, especially as Rotarians, we're trying to be careful with every dollar and cent. So go into it knowing that it's likely going to be a mix and a match, but you want to make sure that you're documenting and that multiple people have that documentation of what information is being captured and stored where, what's the flow of the information, who needs to be notified when we have leadership transitions in July each year, who now needs to be added, who needs to be removed. So you just want to make sure you're keeping that information very clear. Again, make sure that you have at least 3 admins on every account. Try to use a info ad or Gmail account for the club as the master admin, so it always remains with the club and not with any individual. And just keep in mind, nobody's perfect, nothing is perfect, and no one solution is going to work in every case. Just be flexible and prioritize who will do the work now and ongoing, who's going to do it once you're gone, and what are really the most critical needs of your organization. So that's really it. If people have questions, you can always reach me at lynn@lonearmadillo.com. Happy to help. Hope this has been useful and look forward to seeing you. No December meetings, but we'll see you in January and we'll look at presidential citations. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Great talking to you. Take care.